The gravel crunched under the heavy boots of the Iron Promise riders as they gathered in the dim glow of the clubhouse parking lot, the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth and lingering exhaust. It was just past midnight in the forgotten outskirts of Eldridge, where the city lights faded into a haze of shadows and the highway whispered promises of escape. Marcus Hale, at 46, stood apart from the cluster of leather-clad brothers, his broad shoulders hunched against the chill, a faded tattoo of a coiled serpent peeking from his collar, the mark of oaths sworn in blood and fire. His face, weathered by years of sun and sorrow, carried the quiet weight of a man who'd buried too many ghosts. No one spoke of the scars that ran deeper than the ones on his knuckles. They just knew Marcus had ridden with them through hell, from dusty back roads to courtroom battles, always the one who kept his word when the world turned its back. But lately, something had shifted. For months, every Thursday at dusk, Marcus would vanish without explanation, his old Harley rumbling off toward the derelict edge of town. The club had noticed the subtle way he'd check his watch, the extra saddlebags packed with canned goods and envelopes of cash. Whispers rippled through the ranks. Was he meeting a ghost from the old wars, chasing a debt that wasn't his? Or worse, slipping into the shadows of the life they'd all sworn to leave behind? Tonight, under a sky bruised with storm clouds, the president, grizzled old Jax, had called it. "We follow him," Jax growled, his voice like gravel over steel. "No more secrets in this family." The convoy formed silently, 10 bikes, engines idling low, headlights cutting through the mist like accusatory eyes. Marcus didn't suspect a thing. He never looked back. The road to the outskirts twisted like a vein through overgrown lots and skeletal warehouses, the kind of place where hope went to rust. Marcus led the way, his bike a black shadow merging with the night, the wind whipping at his greying beard. Behind him, the brothers kept their distance, engines muffled to a predatory purr. The abandoned house loomed at the end of a cracked lane, its sagging porch and boarded windows a relic of better days, vines clawing up the peeling paint like desperate fingers. It had stood empty for years, or so the rumors went, foreclosed after some family tragedy, left to the mercy of squatters and stray dogs. Marcus killed his engine 100 yards out, the sudden silence amplifying the distant howl of coyotes. He slung a worn duffel over his shoulder and approached on foot, his boots silent on the dew-slick grass, pausing only to glance at the darkened windows as if expecting a sign. From their vantage behind a rusted chain-link fence, the riders watched, hearts pounding in the quiet. Jax signaled to hold, his eyes narrowing. Marcus knocked, 3 deliberate raps that echoed like judgment, and waited. Minutes stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then, a faint creak from within, the door inching open on protesting hinges. A sliver of yellow light spilled out, warm against the cold night, and a small figure appeared in the threshold. Not a ghost, not a dealer or a debtor, but a boy. No older than 9, skinny as a reed, with tousled brown hair and eyes wide with a mix of caution and quiet defiance. He wore an oversized flannel shirt that hung like a tent, his bare feet pale against the warped floorboards. "Uncle Marcus," the boy whispered, his voice fragile but steady, like a flame flickering in the wind. Marcus dropped to one knee, the duffel thudding softly beside him, and pulled the boy into a brief, enveloping hug. "Hey, Jonah, brought the usual, peanut butter, fresh bread, and that book you wanted about the stars." The child's face lit up, a tentative smile breaking through the fear as he stepped aside to let Marcus in. The door closed with a gentle click, sealing away the light, but not before the riders caught the faint scent of mildew and unwashed laundry wafting out. Jax's breath caught. This wasn't some clandestine deal. This was something raw, human. A promise etched in the lines of Marcus's back as he vanished inside. The convoy waited, engines cold now, the weight of unspoken questions settling like fog. Who was this kid? Why here, in this forsaken shell of a home? Minutes turned to an hour, the house's single window glowing faintly as shadows moved within. Marcus's deep rumble of a voice, the boy's softer replies, punctuated by the clink of cans and the rustle of pages. When Marcus finally emerged, the duffel lighter, he paused on the porch, scanning the darkness as if sensing eyes upon him. But he mounted his bike without a word, the engine roaring to life like a beast awakening, and rode back toward the clubhouse, oblivious to the tales trailing him. Back at the lot, the brothers confronted him under the harsh floodlights, forming a loose circle around his bike. Jack stepped forward first, arms crossed, his face a map of concern and betrayal. "Marcus, what the hell was that? You've been ghosting us for months, riding out to that dump alone. We followed you tonight." Saw the kid. Marcus's jaw tightened, his hands gripping the handlebars until the leather creaked. For a long moment he stared at the ground, the rain beginning to patter on his helmet like reluctant tears. Then, slowly, he met their eyes, each one a brother forged in the fires of lost battles, from Vietnam echoes to street fights for justice. "His name's Jonah," Marcus said finally, his voice low and steady, carrying the gravel of too many unsaid words. "His father was one of us. Tommy Hale, no relation but blood all the same. Rode with the Promise back in the day, before the raids and the setups. Tommy got pinched on a bad frame-up, cops turning a blind eye to the real crooks. Planting evidence to shut him up. He rotted in that cell for 3 years, fighting for a kid he barely saw anymore." The rain picked up, drumming on jackets, but no one moved. Marcus's eyes distant, replaying memories, the courtroom where Tommy had clasped his hand, whispering through the chaos, "Promise me, brother, if I don't make it out, keep Jonah from the system. Those foster mills chew up souls like his. Raise him right, or at least keep him safe, on our oath." The club fell silent, the weight of it sinking in. Tommy hadn't made it, whispers of a prison fight, a body lost in the shuffle, no justice, no closure. Marcus had shouldered it alone week after week, paying the utilities under false names, stocking the pantry, teaching the boy to read by lantern light. "He's got no one else," Marcus continued, rain streaking his face. "Mother walked out years ago, scared off by the life. I go there to honor Tommy's last words. It's not glory or revenge, it's just keeping my word, our word." Jax placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, the gesture bridging the gap. "You should have told us, brother. We're family. That promise? It's ours now." Nods rippled through the group, engines firing up not in pursuit but in solidarity. As they rode out into the storm, the first light of dawn piercing the horizon, the abandoned house stood a little less alone. Jonah, peering from the window, watched the taillights fade, a spark of hope kindling in his chest. For the first time, the silence felt like protection, not isolation, a promise renewed, binding them all in the quiet strength of loyalty unspoken. The first rays of dawn sliced through the storm clouds like hesitant fingers, painting the clubhouse in hues of gold and grey as the Iron Promise riders pulled into the lot. Engines growled to a halt, the rumble fading into the patter of residual rain on metal roofs, leaving only the heavy breathing of men who had just reclaimed a piece of their soul. Marcus dismounted slowly, his boots sinking into the muddied gravel, the weight of confession lifting slightly from his shoulders. Jax clapped him on the back again, harder this time, a silent vow sealed in the chill morning air. The brothers dispersed without fanfare, some to their bunks for a few hours' rest, others to the garage, where the scent of oil and welding sparks promised distraction. But the air hummed with purpose now, a shared secret binding them tighter than any oath sworn over whiskey and firelight. Inside the clubhouse, the common room was a sanctuary of scarred wooden tables and faded posters from rides long past, remnants of battles won against the odds. From charity runs for fallen vets to standoffs with crooked officials. Marcus poured himself a black coffee, the steam rising like ghosts from the mug, and sank into a chair by the window. Jonah's face lingered in his mind. Those wide eyes, trusting yet guarded, mirroring the boy Tommy had once been before the club, before the streets claimed their toll. He hadn't planned to carry this alone. Pride, or maybe shame at his own failures, had kept him silent. Now, with the truth out, a fragile hope stirred. The club wasn't just riders, they were keepers of promises, the kind that outlasted rust and regret. Jax joined him, sliding into the opposite seat with a creak of leather, his salt and pepper beard still damp. "We need details, Marcus. Tommy's story. It's got holes we can't ignore. That frame-up. Who pulled the strings?" Marcus nodded, staring into the dark liquid as if it held answers. Tommy Hale, no bloodkin, but closer than brothers, had been the heart of the old crew. A mechanic with hands that could coax life from any engine and a laugh that cut through the darkest nights. They'd ridden together in the shadows of the 90s, smuggling aid to forgotten families on the border, dodging federals who labeled them outlaws for standing against the tide. But one raid changed it all. A warehouse bust gone wrong, whispers of planted drugs, a judge with ties to the syndicates Tommy had exposed. "It was the Eldridge PD, Marcus said, voice low. "Captain Reyes, still pulling shifts from what I hear. He had a grudge after Tommy tipped off the feds about a kickback ring. Evidence vanished, witnesses flipped. Tommy took the fall to protect the rest of us." The door swung open then, admitting Lena, the club's unofficial medic, a sharp-eyed nurse in her 40s, with tattoos of medical symbols snaking up her arms from her own days, patching up the wounded in war zones. She'd lost a brother to the same system that chewed up Tommy, and her presence now felt like fate's quiet nod. "Heard the rumble," she said, pouring her own coffee. "If we're digging into this, count me in. Jonah's too young for those shadows." Jax leaned forward, the table groaning under his elbows. "First, we secure the kid. That house ain't safe long-term. Too exposed. Marcus, you ride out today. Check on him. Rest of us? We start pulling threads. Old contacts, court records under the table. No guns, no glory, just truth." By midday, the sun had burned off the clouds, turning the outskirts into a shimmering haze of heat rising from cracked asphalt. Marcus rode alone this time, the Harley vibrating beneath him like a loyal heartbeat, the wind carrying the faint tang of wild sage from the nearby hills. The abandoned house appeared sooner than expected, its silhouette less foreboding in the light, though the vines still clawed at the eaves like unanswered pleas. He parked at the edge of the lane, grabbing a fresh bag from the saddle, apples from the market, a flashlight with new batteries, and a small radio for company. Knocking softly, he called out, "Jonah, it's me!" The door cracked open faster than last night, the boy's face appearing with a cautious smile. "Uncle Marcus, I made oatmeal, like you showed me." The scent of it wafted out, warm and comforting against the musty air inside. They sat at a rickety kitchen table, the room lit by sunlight filtering through gaps in the boarded windows, dust motes dancing like fireflies. Jonah spooned his breakfast carefully, his small hands steady despite the oversized shirt sleeves flopping over them. "Did you tell them? About Dad?" he asked, eyes fixed on his bowl. Marcus hesitated, the weight of half-truths pressing in. "Yeah, kid, the club's family now. They're gonna help." Jonah's shoulders relaxed a fraction, but shadows lingered in his gaze. Nights alone, the creak of the house settling like footsteps that never came. Marcus watched him, remembering Tommy's letters from prison, scribbled pleas smuggled out, begging for updates on the boy, vowing to fight back. But the system had its ways, fights staged as suicides, bodies unclaimed. "Your dad was the strongest man I knew," Marcus said softly. "He made me promise to keep you from all that, and I will. We will." As the afternoon wore on, Marcus helped patch a leak in the roof, the hammer's rhythmic thud echoing their quiet talk of stars and engines. Dreams Jonah harbored of fixing bikes like his father, but unease gnawed at Marcus. A distant engine hum, too purposeful for a passerby, prickled his senses. From the porch, he scanned the road, nothing but heat waves. Yet the feeling persisted, a whisper of eyes in the underbrush. Back at the clubhouse that evening, he relayed it to Jax and Lena. The group gathered around a map of Eldridge's underbelly. Reyes's crew still patrols those fringes, Jax mused, tracing a finger along faded lines. If they know about Jonah. The room tensed. The air thick with resolve. Lena pulled out her notebook, jotting contacts, old lawyers, sympathetic clerks, who might unearth Tommy's files without raising alarms. Night fell heavy, the clubhouse alive with the low murmur of plans, rotations to watch the house, funds pooled for a safer hideout, whispers of confronting Reyes not with fists, but with the unyielding truth of a father's last stand. Marcus lay awake in his bunk, the serpent tattoo itching like a reminder. This wasn't just about Jonah anymore, it was redemption for them all, honoring the fallen, mending the fractures of a world that rewarded silence over justice. Outside, the wind howled through the pines, carrying the promise of storms yet to come. But for the first time, Marcus slept with the certainty that he wasn't riding alone. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The moon hung low over Eldridge like a tarnished coin, casting silvery veins across the clubhouse roof as the Iron Promise riders settled into the night's vigil. Inside, the air was thick with the aroma of stale coffee and machine oil, the kind that clung to calloused hands and unspoken vows. Marcus paced the worn floorboards of the common room, his shadow stretching long under the bare bulb, while Jax pored over a stack of yellowed clippings pilfered from a sympathetic archivist downtown. Lena sat nearby, her fingers flying over an old laptop, cross-referencing names in the dim glow of the screen. The revelation about Jonah had ignited something primal in them, a fierce, protective fire that burned away the rust of routine rides and barroom brawls. This was no mere charity run. It was a reckoning, a thread pulled from the frayed tapestry of their shared history. Jax slammed a folder shut, the sound echoing like a gavel. Tommy's trial transcripts. It's all here, buried under layers of legalese. Reyes pushed the narrative hard. Tommy as the kingpin, running ghost shipments that never existed. But look at this, witness statements that contradict. Pulled before they hit the stand. His voice carried the gravel of a man who'd stared down worse odds, from border skirmishes to badge-wearing bullies. Marcus stopped pacing, leaning over the table, his eyes tracing the faded ink. Memories flooded back. The night of the bust, sirens wailing through the fog-shrouded docks, Tommy shoving him toward the shadows with an urgent whisper. "Get clear! A brother! The boys counting on us!" He'd vanished into the raid's chaos, only to surface in cuffs, his face bloodied but unbowed. The club had scraped together funds for lawyers, but the system was a greased machine, spitting out convictions like spent casings. Lena glanced up, her expression a mix of resolve and quiet fury. "I've got a contact at the county clerk's, says files like Tommy's get archived, off-site, when someone upstairs leans in. Reyes is still captain, Marcus, if he's sniffing around that house." She trailed off, the implication hanging heavy. Jonah's fragile world, pieced together with duct tape and determination, could shatter under the weight of old grudges. Marcus nodded, the serpent tattoo on his neck seeming to coil tighter. He'd seen the boys' drawings that afternoon, crude sketches of bikes thundering across starry skies, dreams etched in pencil on grocery bags. Keeping him safe meant more than food and shelter. It meant dragging Tommy's truth into the light, proving the promise wasn't just words whispered in a cell block. By first light, the plan took shape. Jax divided the crew, 2 riders to shadow the house from afar, rotating shifts to blend with the morning commuters, Lena to chase leads through her network of hospital aides and reformed clerks, Marcus to ride point, gathering what scraps Jonah might hold of his father's final days. The engines roared to life in the parking lot, a symphony of low growls and popping exhausts, as they fanned out into the awakening city. Marcus's Harley cut through the mist rising from the river, the cool rush of air whipping at his jacket, carrying hints of damp leaves and distant rain. The outskirts unfolded like a forgotten reel, boarded shops with peeling signs, chain-link fences rattling in the breeze. He arrived at the house as the sun crested the hills, painting the vines in warm amber, turning the decay into something almost poetic. Jonah was already up, sweeping the porch with a broom too big for his frame, the rhythmic swish cutting through the quiet. He looked up at the approaching bike, his face brightening before caution tempered it. "Uncle Marcus, you're early." Marcus killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the boy's words, and handed over a paper bag heavy with muffins and a thermos of hot chocolate. "Couldn't sleep, kid. Thought we could talk more about your dad." They settled on the steps, the wood creaking under their weight, as Jonah sipped carefully, steam curling like secrets. The boy spoke haltingly at first, memories of Tommy's rough hands fixing toys, stories of rides where the wind felt like freedom. "He said you'd come if something happened. Said the club was his real family." Marcus's throat tightened. The weight of that trust passed like a baton in the dark, pressed against his chest. As the morning deepened, Marcus helped Jonah tend the small garden out back, a patch of stubborn tomatoes and herbs fighting the weeds. The soil was cool and loamy under their fingers, a rare moment of peace amid the gathering storm. But peace was fleeting. From the tree line, a glint caught Marcus's eye, a flash of sunlight on metal too deliberate for chance. He straightened, wiping dirt from his hands, scanning the brush. "Stay inside, Jonah. Lock the door." The boy obeyed without question, his small form vanishing into the shadows of the house. Marcus mounted his bike slowly, engine idling as he circled the lane, senses attuned to every rustle. Nothing stirred overtly, but the prickle at his nape told him they weren't alone. Reyes's patrols, or something worse, echoes of the syndicates Tommy had crossed. Back at the clubhouse by noon, the air crackled with urgency. The Shadow Riders reported an unmarked sedan lingering near the fringes earlier, plates obscured by mud. Jax's face hardened as he gathered the crew around the map, pinning notes like battle markers. "They're circling. We push back. Quiet, but firm. Lena, any hits on those files?" She nodded, sliding over printouts. "Partial luck. Tommy's appeal docs mention a suppressed report. Witness saw Reyes at the warehouse before the bust, planting something, but it's sealed tight." The room fell into a charged hush, the scent of determination mingling with the ever-present oil. Marcus traced the routes on the map, his mind racing. Confronting Reyes meant risking the fragile balance, but silence had already cost Tommy his life. This promise demanded action, not reckless charges, but the steady grind of truth against corruption. As evening bled into the sky, painting it in strokes of crimson and indigo, the riders prepped for the next phase, a midnight meet with an old informant, a former cop turned whistleblower, tucked in a roadside diner beyond the city limits. Marcus rode out with Jax, the 2 bikes slicing through twilight, headlights piercing the gathering dusk like resolve made manifest. The diner loomed ahead, its neon sign flickering open in weary invitation, the smell of frying onions wafting out as they parked. Inside, amid the clatter of plates and low hum of conversation, their contact waited, a wiry man named Ellis, nursing a coffee, his eyes darting like a cornered fox. "Reyes buried Tommy deep," he muttered, sliding a thumb drive across the formica. "But dig here. Off-record tapes, The kind that could crack his empire. Just watch your backs, he's got eyes everywhere. The drive burned in Marcus's pocket as they rode back. The wind, now a howling companion, whipping secrets from the pines. At the clubhouse, the brothers huddled close, the weight of potential victory mingling with dread. Jonah's safety, Tommy's redemption. It all hinged on this fragile evidence. A spark against the machine. Marcus glanced at the window, imagining the boy's lantern light flickering in the distance. The promise pulsed stronger now, binding them in a web of loyalty that no shadow could sever. Outside, thunder rumbled on the horizon, a prelude to the storms ahead. But in that moment, the iron promise stood unyielding, guardians of oaths that refused to fade. The thunder rolled in like an uninvited guest, shaking the clubhouse windows as the iron promise riders crowded around the scarred oak table. The thumb drive from Ellis glinting under the harsh fluorescent light like a forbidden talisman. Rain lashed against the panes, blurring the world outside into a watercolor of greys, while inside the air hummed with the sharp tang of wet leather and anticipation. Marcus plugged the device into Lena's laptop, the screen flickering to life with grainy audio files and scanned memos, each one a breadcrumb leading back to the rot at Eldridge's core. Jax leaned in closest, his breath fogging the monitor, eyes narrowing at the timestamps, nights that matched Tommy's arrest. Voices distorted but unmistakable, Reyes's clipped commands echoing through static. Make it stick. The kid's old man talks too much. No one spoke at first. The weight of revelation settled like lead in their chests. Marcus's fingers drummed the table, the serpent tattoo flexing with each tap, a reminder of serpents in the garden they now navigated. This wasn't abstract justice anymore. It was visceral, the kind that clawed at the soul, demanding they unearth Tommy's grave not with shovels, but with the unyielding blade of truth. Lena scrolled through the files, her medic's precision turning detective, highlighting discrepancies. A warehouse log fudged by hours, a payoff slip initialed in Reyes's hand. This could blow it open, she murmured, voice steady but laced with the fire of someone who'd bandaged too many wounds inflicted by badgers. But leaking it wrong? They'd bury us deeper than Tommy. The storm outside intensified, wind howling through the pines like the ghosts of promises broken, as Jack straightened, his presence commanding the room like a captain steadying a foundering ship. We don't rush. First, verify. Ellis said these are raw. No chain of custody. We need a clean channel, someone who can testify without vanishing. Nods rippled through the group, brothers like rugged statues forged in shared trials. There was Rico, the quiet welder with scars from a factory fire that claimed his kin, and Tate, the ex-Marine whose steady gaze hid the nightmares of deserts far from here. They'd all lost pieces to the system, jobs, freedom, lives, and now, for Jonah, they'd reclaim what they could. Marcus felt the pull strongest, the boy's trusting eyes from that morning visit haunting him, a fragile light against the encroaching dark. By midnight, the rain had eased to a persistent drizzle, turning the parking lot into a mirror of shattered stars. Marcus volunteered for the watch shift at the house, his Harley purring to life under the club's floodlights, exhaust mingling with the earthy petrichor. The ride through Eldridge's veins was meditative, street lamps casting elongated shadows that danced like wary sentinels. He arrived under a sliver of moon, the abandoned home's outline softened by mist, vines dripping like tears from the eaves. Parking in the deeper shadows, he approached on foot, boots squelching in the mud, senses alive to every snap of twig or distant splash. The house breathed quietly, a faint glow from Jonah's window like a heartbeat in the night. He knocked softly. 3 raps, their code, and the door creaked open almost immediately, Jonah's silhouette small but alert. "Uncle Marcus, it's late." The boy rubbed sleep from his eyes, his flannel pajamas rumpled, the air inside carrying the faint, comforting scent of chamomile tea Marcus had taught him to brew. Marcus stepped in, shaking off the rain, and they settled in the dim kitchen, the lantern casting warm pools on the walls, adorned with Jonah's sketches. Bikes now joined by crude maps of stars, dreams taking root in pencil strokes. "Couldn't stay away, kid. Club's digging for your dad, real answers." Jonah's face lit with a spark, but it flickered with fear, his small hands twisting the hem of his shirt. "What if they find out? The men in the car? I saw lights earlier, circling slow." Marcus's gut twisted. The boy's words confirmed the shadows he'd sensed, Reyes's web tightening like a noose. He pulled Jonah close, the embrace rough but tender, the scent of soap and innocence grounding him. "They won't touch you. That's the promise. Yours, mine, all of ours." They talked then in whispers, Jonah sharing fragments Tommy had left behind. A hidden box under the floorboards, letters yellowed with time, vows scrawled in a father's desperate hand. He said, "Family isn't blood. It's who shows up." Marcus nodded, throat tight, as thunder grumbled approval in the distance. He stayed longer than planned, fortifying the doors with spare boards, teaching Jonah a simple signal, a flashlight Morse for help, before riding back, the road slick and treacherous under tires that gripped like loyalty. Dawn broke grey and unforgiving at the clubhouse, the riders reconvening with bleary eyes and steaming mugs. The thumb drive now backed up on multiple drives, hidden in the garage's false panels. Lena had worked through the night, piecing together a timeline that painted Reyes not as a lone wolf, but head of a pack. Kickbacks from syndicates Tommy had threatened to expose, the frame-up a silencing shot. "We take it to Harlan," Jax decided, referring to a retired judge with a soft spot for the club's veteran runs. His chambers a neutral ground beyond the fray. "Anonymous drop first. Let him vet it. If it's solid, we go public. Shields up." Marcus agreed, but doubt gnawed. Harlan was clean, but the path to him wound through alleys where trust was a luxury. Still, inaction was betrayal, and Tommy's ghost demanded movement. As the morning sun clawed through the clouds, casting long shadows across the lot, the crew split tasks. Rico and Tate to tail any suspicious tales on the house, Lena to encrypt the files for safe passage. Marcus lingered by his bike, polishing the chrome with a cloth that smelled of oil and memory, the serpent tattoo catching the light, a guardian now, not a curse. Jonah's words echoed. Who shows up? The club was showing up, not with thunderous charges, but with the quiet steel of men redeemed by purpose. Yet as he mounted up for the drop-off ride, an unmarked van idled at the lot's edge, engine humming low, vanishing into traffic before eyes could confirm. The game had escalated, tension coiling like the storm's aftermath, but the promise held firm, a beacon against the corruption's tide. The road to Harlan's office twisted through Eldridge's heart, past gleaming precincts that masked the decay within, Marcus's saddlebags heavy with the drive's copy. Wind rushed past, carrying the faint brine from the river, a sensory reminder of freedoms won and lost. He arrived under a sky clearing to blue, the judge's brick building unassuming, like justice itself when it worked right. Handing off the package through a discreet aide, Marcus felt the first real shift. A thread pulled, the weave beginning to unravel. Back with the brothers that afternoon, hope flickered amid the planning, Jonah's safety the North Star guiding their moral compass. But evening brought the counterstroke. A call from the Shadow Watch, lights probing the house again, closer this time, voices muffled but urgent. Marcus's blood ran cold. They were testing, probing for weakness. The clubhouse erupted in controlled fury, Jax mapping defenses, reinforced watches, a safe house prepped in the hills. As night fell, stars piercing the velvet sky, Marcus rode out once more, the Harley's roar a vow renewed. The abandoned house stood defiant, Jonah's lantern a steady flame within. This fight wasn't for glory, but for the silent honor that bound them, redemption woven from loyalty's unbreaking chain. If this tale of quiet courage is stirring something in you, hit that like button. It helps spread these stories of honor and heart to more riders on the road. The night air bit sharp as Marcus's Harley cut through the outskirts, its headlight carving a silver path along the cracked lane leading to the abandoned house. The engine's low thrum vibrated through his bones, a steady pulse against the unease coiling in his gut like barbed wire. Drizzle from the earlier storm lingered, turning the road into a slick mirror that reflected fractured stars overhead, while the scent of wet pine and distant wood smoke hung heavy. Behind him, the city lights of Eldridge faded to pinpricks, swallowed by the encroaching wilds where forgotten edges met untamed resolve. Jonah's lantern had been a beacon earlier, but now, as Marcus neared, only shadows greeted him. No warm glow, just the house's silhouette hunkered like a weary sentinel, vines dripping condensation onto the porch. He killed the engine a stone's throw away, the sudden quiet amplifying the rustle of leaves and his own measured breaths. Boots sinking into the soft earth, Marcus approached with deliberate steps, hand brushing the concealed knife at his belt, not for drawing blood, but for the illusion of control in a world that offered none. The front door hung slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness yawning where light should spill. "Jonah?" His voice was a low rumble, carrying across the stillness, met only by the faint creak of settling wood. Heart quickening, he pushed inside, the hinges protesting like a warning. The air within was stale, laced with the faint mustiness of damp plaster and uneaten oatmeal from the morning, but something felt off, too still, the boy's usual clutter of sketch pads and books undisturbed on the table. A soft scuffle from the back room drew him forward, flashlight beams slicing through the gloom to reveal Jonah huddled in the corner of the bedroom, knees drawn to his chest, eyes wide and shimmering in the light. The boy clutched a worn stuffed bear, its fur matted from years of solace, and his flannel pajamas were twisted as if from restless tossing. "They came," Jonah whispered, voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "The car. Lights sweeping the windows. I hid like you said." Marcus knelt swiftly, the floorboards groaning under his weight, and enveloped the child in a protective arm, the warmth of small limbs against his leather jacket, a stark contrast to the chill seeping through the walls. "You're safe now, kid. Tell me what you saw." Jonah's words tumbled out in fragments, the low growl of an engine idling too long, shadows of two figures probing the yard with flashlights, murmurs of "clear" before they retreated into the night. No entry, no threats shouted, but the intrusion lingered like a predator's scent. Marcus's mind raced, piecing it with the clubhouse intel. The unmarked van at the lot, the probing lights Rico and Tate had spotted, Reyes's hand, no doubt, testing the waters, sniffing for the loose thread that could unravel his empire. He helped Jonah to his feet, the boy's hand small and trusting in his calloused one, and they moved to the kitchen, where Marcus lit the lantern, its golden flicker pushing back the encroaching dark. Pouring water from a jug into a tin cup, he watched Jonah sip, the steam rising like fragile hope. "Your dad faced worse," Marcus said softly, pulling a chair close. "Stared down raids that would have broken lesser men. It's just noise before the truth hits." Jonah nodded, but fear etched lines too deep for a 9-year-old, a reminder of the system's cruel legacy, the foster shadows Tommy had died shielding him from. Outside, the drizzle picked up, pattering on the tin roof like impatient fingers, as Marcus radioed the clubhouse in hushed tones. Jax's voice crackled back, gravelly with sleep interrupted. "We're mobilizing. Get the kid to the safe house. Hills North, Old Mill. Lena's prepping it." No arguments, just the seamless rhythm of family in motion, brothers rousing from bunks with the quiet efficiency of men who'd pulled each other from wrecks before. Marcus packed essentials swiftly, Jonah's drawings, the hidden box of Tommy's letters, a duffel of clothes and canned goods, while the boy watched, silent but attentive, absorbing the gravity like a sponge. "We're moving you tonight," Marcus explained, slinging the bag over his shoulder. "Safer spot, with eyes on all sides. Club's got your back." Jonah's eyes met his, a spark of the father's defiance igniting. Like Dad's rides? Altogether. The question hung poignant as they slipped out, Marcus guiding Jonah to the bike's sidecar, a makeshift addition from club scraps padded with blankets for the ride. The engine roared to life, muffled by the rain, and they pulled away, the house receding in the rear view like a chapter closing. The road wound upward into the hills, tires gripping the muddy curves, the scent of sagebrush sharpening with altitude. Wind whipped at their faces, carrying the clean bite of elevation, and Jonah clung tight, his small voice cutting through the rush. "Uncle Marcus, what if they follow?" Marcus glanced back, the boy's face pale but resolute in the headlights' glow. "Then we outride 'em. Promises like this, they don't break for shadows." At the old mill, hidden among pines that whispered secrets to the night, the safe house awaited, a weathered structure once a hub for prohibition runs, now fortified with reinforced doors and a generator's hum. Lena met them at the threshold, her nurse's bag slung over one shoulder, face illuminated by a porch lantern that cast her tattoos in stark relief. "Brought extras, vitamins, a radio for stories," she said, ushering them in with a gentle hand on Jonah's shoulder. The interior was sparse but warm, cots with fresh linens, a wood stove crackling against the damp, shelves stocked by the club's quiet network. Jax arrived minutes later, his truck rumbling up the hidden drive, followed by Rico and Tate on bikes, their headlights sweeping the perimeter like vigilant eyes. Gathered around the stove, the group formed a loose circle, the fires pop and hiss underscoring their low voices. Jack spread the map on a rickety table, pinning it with a boot knife. Harlan's aide confirmed receipt, says the files look solid, but verification takes time. Reyes's probe tonight, it's panic. He smells the noose. Lena nodded, stirring a pot of soup that filled the air with savory notes of herbs and broth. I cross-checked with my contacts. Tommy's death reports got anomalies, accidental fight with no witnesses named. Ties back to Reyes's crew. Marcus watched Jonah settle on a cot with the bear, the boy's eyelids drooping as warmth took hold. But his mind churned. This sanctuary was temporary. True safety meant dismantling the corruption at its root, honoring Tommy not with hiding, but with exposure. As the night deepened, the rain easing to a soft murmur on the roof, Jax pulled Marcus aside to the porch, the cool mist beading on their jackets. "You're carrying the heaviest load, brother, but remember, this promise binds us all. Jonah's not just yours to shield." Marcus leaned on the railing, staring into the inky tree line where fireflies danced like distant signals. The serpent tattoo itched faintly, a talisman of endurance. He'd lost too much to half measures, friends to wars unspoken, trust to betrayals etched in courtrooms. Yet here, in the chosen family's quiet vigil, redemption flickered. Not in vengeance, but in the unyielding stand against the tide. "For Tommy," Marcus murmured, the words a vow renewed. Jax gripped his arm, the gesture solid as iron. "For all of us." Inside, Jonah slept at last, his breaths even in the firelight, while the riders took shifts at the windows, eyes sharp on the horizon. The mill stood as a bastion, threads of evidence weaving tighter, the moral storm brewing toward its inevitable clash. Dawn would bring new moves, but in this interlude, loyalty's quiet strength held sway, a promise etched in the stars above, unbreakable as the hills themselves. The first light of dawn filtered through the pines like hesitant scouts, casting dappled patterns on the old mill's weathered walls, where the scent of damp wood and smouldering embers lingered from the night's fire. Inside, the safe house stirred with the quiet rhythm of awakening guardians, the soft clink of a kettle on the stove, the rustle of maps being refolded, and Jonah's faint murmur as he shifted on the cot, the stuffed bear tucked under his chin. Marcus had taken the last watch, his broad frame silhouetted against the window, eyes tracing the misty tree line, where fog clung to the underbrush like unspoken fears. The rain's aftermath left the air crisp, laced with the earthy tang of wet soil and pine resin, a fragile peace before the day's inevitable churn. Lena moved with her usual efficiency, pouring steaming mugs of herbal tea that filled the room with chamomile's soothing notes, handing one to Jonah as he sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The boy accepted it with a nod, his small hands wrapping around the warmth, the oversized flannel from Marcus's saddlebag hanging loose on his frame. "Smells like the stuff Dad used to make after long rides," Jonah said softly, his voice carrying a thread of wonder amid the uncertainty. Marcus turned from the window, the lines of his face softening in the morning glow, and ruffled the boy's hair, a gesture rough yet tender, echoing the fatherly bonds Tommy had forged in stolen moments. "Keeps the chill out, kid, and clears the head for what's coming." Jax emerged from the back room, his boots thudding softly on the plank floor, a radio crackling in his hand like a distant storm. The group gathered around the table, the wood scarred from decades of clandestine meets, as he tuned the frequency. Static gave way to a low voice, Harlan's aide speaking in clipped tones from a secure line. "The package checked out. Judge is reviewing now, solid leads on the tampering, but tread light, words spreading in the precinct. Reyes called in favors last night, pulling patrol logs. They're hunting ghosts." The line went dead, leaving the room in a charged hush, the weight of proximity pressing in. Reyes wasn't just probing anymore. He was cornered, lashing out with the desperation of a man whose empire teetered on exposed lies. Marcus's jaw set, the serpent tattoo on his neck seeming to pulse with restrained fury, but he kept his voice steady for Jonah's sake. "Means we're close. Truth's a slow burn, but it scorches clean." The boy looked up, his eyes reflecting the lantern's dying embers, a mix of awe and lingering shadow. Like the stories Dad told, about the club standing tall? Jax knelt to his level, the president's grizzled features breaking into a rare, genuine smile. "Exactly, son. We don't bend. Now eat. Lena's got eggs going." The normalcy was deliberate, a shield against the encroaching storm, as Rico fired up the stove, the sizzle of butter and the rich aroma of cooking yolks weaving a momentary veil of home. Outside, the hills awoke with birdsong piercing the mist, but the rider's senses stayed sharp, ears attuned to every snap of branch or distant engine hum. Tate and Rico took perimeter patrol, their bikes idling low in the hidden drive, exhaust mingling with the fog like exhaled resolve. Marcus stepped onto the porch, with Jonah trailing close, the cool air nipping at their skin, carrying hints of wild mint from the undergrowth. They walked the edge of the clearing, Marcus pointing out tracks in the mud. Deer, not tires, a small lesson in reading the land, much like Tommy had taught him in their younger days scouting border trails. "See how the prints fade. World's always moving, but we choose our path." Jonah nodded, kicking a pebble that skittered into the brush, his steps gaining confidence on the uneven ground. Back inside, the radio buzzed again mid-morning, Lena snatching it up as she bandaged a minor cut on Tate's hand from thorns. Ellis's voice this time, strained and urgent. "Reyes has got a tail on the clubhouse, subtle, but there, and word from inside. He's digging into old Hale files, sniffing for the kid, if he connects dots." The transmission cut, but the implication hung like smoke. The safe house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a tightening knot. Jax paced, the floor creaking under his weight, while Marcus pulled Jonah aside to the back alcove, away from the tension. "Remember the signal we practiced? Flash twice if anything feels off." The boy demonstrated with a small light, the beams cutting brief arcs in the dim space, his face set with a determination that mirrored his father's unyielding spirit. By noon, the sun burned through the clouds, turning the mist to steam that rose like spirits from the valley floor, the hillsides shimmering in the heat. The crew prepped for a supply run, essentials from a neutral drop point. No risks, just the steady grind of survival. Marcus volunteered to ride with Jonah in the sidecar, the boys' excitement flickering as they mounted up, the Harley's engine purring to life with a throaty rumble that vibrated through the frame. Lena rode shotgun in Jax's truck behind, her eyes scanning mirrors for shadows. The descent wound through switchbacks, tires gripping gravel with a gritty whisper, the wind rushing past laden with the sharp scent of eucalyptus and sun-warmed earth. Jonah pointed out hawks circling overhead, their cries sharp against the sky, a fleeting distraction from the undercurrent of pursuit. Halfway down, the trap sprung. A black SUV materialized from a side road, falling in behind with predatory grace. No sirens, but lights flashing in silent warning. Marcus's grip tightened on the handlebars, the bike surging forward as Jax's truck veered to block, creating a rolling barrier. "Hold on, kid!" he shouted over the roar. Jonah's small hands clutching the side, eyes wide but unflinching. The SUV pushed closer, engines snarling, but the hills favored the riders. Narrow turns, where bulk meant disadvantage. Lena radioed ahead to Rico. "Incoming! Flank 'em!" Tires screeched as the chase twisted, dust billowing in choking clouds, the acrid bite of burned rubber filling the air. They shook the tail at a blind curve, dipping into a concealed ravine where the club had scouted escape routes years back. The SUV overshooting in a spray of gravel. Hearts pounding, they regrouped at the drop point, a nondescript barn on the fringe, supplies waiting under tarps. Jax dismounted, face thunderous, as Marcus checked Jonah over, the boy's cheeks flushed but unbroken. "That was Reyes's dogs," Jax growled, loading crates of water and meds. "Pushing harder. Harlan better move fast." The return ride was tense, engines low to avoid echoes, the hills now allies in their shadowed vigil. Back at the mill by late afternoon, the group fortified. Barricades from felled logs, extra radios tuned to encrypted channels. Jonah helped stack cans, his small frame tireless, drawing strength from the family's unyielding circle. As dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, Marcus sat with him by the fire, sharing tales of Tommy's rides, not the dangers, but the bonds, the laughter under starlit highways. "He'd be proud, kid, of you, of us keeping the word." Jonah leaned against him, the warmth of the flames dancing in his eyes, a quiet redemption blooming in the shared silence. Night fell swift, the safe house aglow with lantern light. But outside, the wind carried whispers of movement, distant engines probing the dark. The evidence was en route to Harlan's full review, a spark ready to ignite, yet Reyes's shadow loomed larger, the moral clash barreling toward collision. Marcus stood watch again, the serpent tattoo, a sentinel's mark, knowing the promise's true test lay just beyond the tree line, a stand for justice that would either redeem or consume them all. The stars wheeled overhead like silent witnesses as Marcus held his vigil on the mill's porch, the night air thick with the resinous bite of pine and the faint, acrid echo of the day's chase. His breath fogged in the chill, mingling with the mist that curled from the valley below, where Eldridge's lights flickered like distant campfires of a war not yet won. The serpent tattoo on his neck prickled under his collar, a living reminder of coils tightening toward release. Tommy's promise, now woven into the fabric of every rider's resolve. Inside, the safe house hummed with subdued activity. Lena's soft footsteps as she checked Jonah's feverish brow, the boy tossing fitfully on the cot after the adrenaline's crash. Jax's low murmur into the radio, coordinating with Rico and Tate on the perimeter, their shadows merging with the trees like ghosts on guard. Dawn crept in reluctant, painting the eastern sky in strokes of rose and ash. The first bird-song slicing through the quiet like a herald. Marcus's eyes burned from the watch, but sleep was a luxury deferred. The radio crackled to life in his hand, Jax's voice emerging gravelly but urgent from within. "Harlan's on the line. Secure channel. Get in here." He stepped inside, the door's hinges whispering shut behind him. The warmth of the stove wrapping around him like an old friend's embrace. The group clustered around the table, faces etched with the night's toll, Jax's beard shadowed, Lena's eyes sharp despite the fatigue, Jonah propped up on pillows, clutching his bear with wide-eyed attentiveness. The judge's voice boomed from the speaker, tinny but authoritative, carrying the weight of decades on the bench. The files hold water hail, tampering clear as day, Reyes's signatures on falsified logs, audio tying him to the plant. I've forwarded to the State Attorney General. Raids starting at dawn on the precinct. But listen, your boy's name surfaced in queries last night. Get him clear, full extraction. The words landed like a thunderclap. The room exhaling in collective relief, laced with the sharp tang of finality. Jonah's small hand found Marcus's, squeezing with a trust forged in firelight tales and midnight escapes. Does this mean Dad's okay now? The question hung fragile, pulling at the threads of loss Marcus knew too well, the ache of a father reduced to echoes in letters and legends. He knelt, meeting the boy's gaze, the lantern's glow catching the unshed tears in both their eyes. "It means the truth's out, kid. Your dad's fight, it's winning. No more shadows." Jax nodded, clapping Marcus on the shoulder, the gesture bridging the gap from solitary burden to shared victory. Wheels are turning. We ride this out together, one last push. The morning unfolded in measured haste. The hills alive, with the rustle of leaves in a breeze that carried hints of wildflowers blooming defiant against the damp earth. Lena packed medical kits into saddlebags, her movements precise, while Rico and Tate scouted the descent route, engines idling low to mask their departure. Jonah helped where he could, folding blankets with careful folds. His flannel sleeves rolled up like a miniature rider in training. The air buzzed with purpose, the scent of fresh coffee grounding them as Jax outlined the plan. A convoy to a neutral haven beyond Eldridge, a ranch owned by an old club ally, far from prying badges, where Jonah could breathe without looking over his shoulder. "No heroics," Jax warned, his voice steady as the oak table. "This ends with justice, not blood. Tommy's way, honor first." As the sun climbed higher, gilding the treetops in molten light, the convoy formed in the hidden drive. Marcus's Harley leading with Jonah secure in the sidecar, Lena's truck trailing with supplies, and the brothers fanning out like wings of iron resolve. The engines roared in unison, a symphony that echoed off the hills, tires churning gravel into dust clouds that swirled like victory banners. The descent was cautious, switchbacks gripping tight, the wind whipping past with the clean rush of liberation, carrying away the weight of months in secrecy. No tails materialized this time. Perhaps Reyes's web was already fraying, his empire crumbling under the flood of warrants and whispers from within. Word reached them en route via radio bursts. Sirens wailing through Eldridge's streets, Reyes in cuffs at the precinct steps, his face a mask of crumbling authority as reporters swarmed like hawks to carrion. The frame-up unraveled in headlines. Tommy Hale exonerated posthumously, his name cleared in a press release that painted the club not as outlaws, but as the unyielding keepers of moral fire. Marcus glanced down at Jonah, the boy's face alight with the wind's caress, eyes fixed on the horizon where the road promised open skies. "Feel that, kid? Freedom's got a rumble all its own." Jonah grinned, small but fierce, the stuffed bear wedged beside him like a talisman of the journey's end. They arrived at the ranch by midday, the sprawling fields rolling out under a vast blue expanse. The air rich with the loamy scent of turned earth and grazing horses. The ally, a weathered rancher named Elias with a limp from old rodeos, greeted them at the gate, his handshake firm as forged steel. "Heard the news on the wire. Safe harbor here, long as you need." The safe house transition felt like shedding skin. Jonah exploring the barn with wide-eyed wonder, discovering kittens in the hay and a swing hung from an ancient oak, its creak a lullaby of normalcy. Marcus watched from the porch, the serpent tattoo now a badge of battles won, as Lena unpacked and Jax coordinated final threads, legal guardianships in motion, funds for Jonah's future secured by the club's quiet network. By evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the fields in amber and shadow, the riders gathered around a fire pit, flames crackling with the pop of sap-rich logs, the scent of roasting marshmallows mingling with wood smoke. Jonah sat between Marcus and Jax, toasting his treat with careful turns, laughter bubbling as stories flowed, not of raids or regrets, but of rides yet to come, stars mapping paths unbroken. The promise fulfilled echoed in the quiet. Tommy's last words redeemed, not in vengeance, but in the living legacy of loyalty chosen. Marcus raised his mug, the group falling silent in the fire's glow. To family, the kind that rides through hell and honors the word. For Tommy, for Jonah. Murmurs of agreement rippled, the circle tight as the bonds that held them. Night settled gentle, stars blanketing the sky like a benediction, the ranch a bastion of hard-won peace. Jonah slept soundly in a real bed, dreams unshadowed, while Marcus stepped out alone, the cool grass whispering under his boots. The weight lifted, scars fading to stories, redemption not a blaze, but a steady flame, proof that promises, kept in silence or storm, outlast the darkness. The iron promise endured, guardians of oaths that bound the soul. Their thunder now a whisper of hope carried on the wind. Thank you for joining us on this journey of unbreakable bonds and quiet heroism. If these tales of redemption resonate with you, subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll ride together for more stories that honor the heart's true north.